Okay, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Oops. Okay, so this is the second webinar, second meeting in our self-care series. And the reason that we're talking about resilience and hope today is that we know that people that are more resilient have a higher quality of life, more happiness, and they report greater sense of well-being in life. And hope is also really positively correlated with well-being. So there is a lot of research to show that we can build our resilience, become more resilient, and we can also strengthen our sense of hope. So that's what this training is about, is talking about what specifically can you do in your life to become more resilient and more hopeful. Resilience is like an inner wisdom or strength or a groundedness. It's what makes you feel steady, even when something really challenging is happening in life or you're facing a really big obstacle. Resilience is what gives you that clarity and lets you know that you're on the right path. Your path feels sure. And it's the ability to get yourself back to center when something kind of knocks you down, and it allows you to respond with grace, confidence, and faith. Confidence, because with resilience, you know that no matter what it is that's happening, you will be able to survive, you will be able to overcome it, and faith that things will get better. So again, resilience is important because it helps us recover from loss. We all have loss that happens in life. If you experience a trauma, it helps you overcome that, recover from that. Resilience helps you face and overcome challenges, even just the everyday stress of life. Resilience fosters well-being, and it contributes to your overall happiness and your sense of peace. So today we're going to be talking about 3 particular ways that you can build your resilience. 3 different sections of this training. The first has to do with your mindset. The way that you think about a situation largely determines how you feel in response to that situation and how you will respond. And then next we'll be talking about mindfulness and how being mindful can help you be more resilient and what that kind of looks like. And then me time, which is really what we talked about last time, building in time for yourself and making sure that you are taking care of all of the different areas of your life. So mindset, we want to really strive to be a strengths finder. We are not wired to see the good. We're wired to see the negative things as a form of protection. So we have to really work hard to be able to notice and respond to those things that are going well in life and those things that are positive. There are all kinds of stress triggers that we all face on a daily basis. And it's really easy for our brains to grab onto those stressors and just sort of like Velcro, just cling to them and perseverate on them and worry about them. And so what we want to train our brains to do is to kind of like Teflon, let those things hit us, but slide right off and, move on to the next thing. We don't want to be hanging on to those stressful experiences. So one thing you can start to reflect on is, what is the story that you're telling yourself about this stressful thing? We all tell ourselves stories in order to make sense of the world. And the thing is, we don't always tell ourselves accurate, factual stories. We often our stories often have a slant to them, a bias to them. And so it's important to examine, what am I telling myself? Am I making assumptions? Am I assuming the best of others, or am I kind of giving it a negative spin? So when you can try to expect only the best from other people and only the best outcome, that will create a more positive story. And then if you're really stuck in a negative story, one thing you can do is sit down with a notebook or a piece of paper and just see if you can list all of the positive aspects of that situation. And that could be really difficult to do, but it's a training exercise. So you want to really stretch and really, spend some time thinking about, what are the good things about this person or about this situation? What have I learned? How has it forced me to grow? How am I different because of this, different and better? And then you can go back and kind of focus on those positive aspects when you get stuck in a negative story. In order to build your resilience, it requires compassion. You have to have compassion in order to be resilient. And compassion is also an inner strength, just like resilience. And it's a protective factor that buffers against caregiver fatigue, burnout, compassion fatigue, all of the things that you're at very high risk for because of the profession that you're in, because of the difficulty of the work that you do. So to start, you must have compassion for yourself. Easier said than done. Self-compassion is often harder for us to muster up than it is to have compassion for someone else. So you can start by thinking about how you can be more kind to yourself, what kind of messages you give yourself on a daily basis, how you build yourself up in situations where you're having a hard time. Another thing is to not expect perfection of yourself, but to recognize your own humanity. That when you make a mistake, when you do something regretful, that you're human, and that everybody makes mistakes. And so giving yourself that grace, to that forgiveness for something that you wish you had done differently. And the third part of self-compassion requires you to be mindful. And that is mindful of your thoughts. What are the stories you're telling yourself? What are the messages? And so starting to pay attention to, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? How am I responding in this given situation? How am I treating myself? You have to be mindful to even recognize self-compassion. So just starting to practice being more mindful is helpful with that. So how do you develop more compassion for other people? 3 tips. The first is accept things as they are. One of the biggest causes of stress is when we wish that something would be different than it is. I think I went over that quote in the last training. So accepting what you can't change, what's out of your control, and just, acknowledging that this is the way it is right now. Looking for enjoyable moments that enrich each day. So we all have things that happen all day long that are positive. And the question is, do you notice them? And if you do you take a moment to kind of soak those in, acknowledge the feeling that you get from it? Many times we're so busy and we're doing so many things at once that we kind of rush through those enjoyable moments and we don't really benefit from getting the full effect. So you want to really make an effort to notice when something positive happens. Like, for example, one of your students says something to you that you think is adorable, or that it's a real victory, something that you've been working on with that student and they've been able to accomplish it. It's taking a few seconds to acknowledge the feeling about that and really soak that in. And then the third tip is to not regret the past or worry about the future. And that's, again, the mindfulness piece. Being present in this moment is where compassion lies. It doesn't lie in thinking about how things could have been different in the past or what might happen in the future. What you tell yourself every day will either lift you up or tear you down, and you get to choose. So being mindful of those messages, the way you talk to yourself, the way that you think about things, your mindset really sets the tone for your own resilience in life. And again, this is a practice. So we're all on a continuum of learning how to do this. And we can all always get a little better at this. So I think it's important to check in and reflect on where are you on that continuum and what are the pieces of it that you struggle with or that you could pay more attention to or focus on so that you can kind of get a little bit better at that over time. Okay, the second area of building resilience has to do with mindfulness. And the biggest piece of this is self-awareness. And you can't be self-aware without being mindful. Jon Kabat-Zinn says that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Jon Kabat-Zinn is the person who brought mindfulness and meditation to the West and created the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which was an 8-week program that he created for people with chronic pain. And he wanted to test it out and see if it helped people to reduce the stress around the chronic pain and reduce the actual amount of pain that people were feeling. And he, so that was a research study that he designed and found really positive effects. So when you're being mindful, you're building these 3 skills: concentration, power, sensory clarity, or the ability to perceive information from all 5 of your senses, and then equanimity, which is the non-judgmental part. And that's really important in building resilience, because think about it, if you're working on becoming more mindful and you start paying attention to what it is you're saying to yourself, and that doesn't happen to be very positive, without equanimity, you might start judging yourself, or you might have shame about the way that you talk to yourself or the way that you're thinking about a situation. Why am I always so negative? Why do I think this way? Why is this so difficult for me? So we just have to be careful to observe what's happening, but not to judge it, because then we can actually get ourselves into a worse place. I mentioned this a little bit a few minutes ago, that we have our brains are wired with a negativity bias, and that is rooted in our need for survival. And here's what our brains naturally do if we weren't to train them to do anything different. So first, we're always scanning for bad news, and that's in order to keep ourselves safe. So if you're in a situation where it's a new situation, a new environment, new people that you're not familiar with, you're going to be feeling the energy, reading the room, observing people's cues, listening for sounds. You're taking in all of this information to try to figure out, is this a safe place? Is this a place where I can relax and be okay? So you're scanning for bad news. Now, you're not scanning for nice people who look like they're going to be friendly. You're not necessarily naturally scanning for what feels safe about this or what feels good about it. You're looking for the danger, the bad news. If you happen to find something that is negative or chaotic or worrisome, then typically our brains focus tightly on that or hyper focus on that negative thing, which makes us lose sight of the big picture. So a small possible danger can all of a sudden feel like a crisis because it's all we're thinking about. We're focusing in so tightly on that negative thing that now the entire room feels negative, even though it's only one small little piece of evidence. And that causes us to emotionally overreact to that situation. So the amygdala gets involved, it releases cortisol, your body is now, activated and triggered, and you're having this whole physical reaction. In addition to that, the hypothalamus, its job is to store that experience and everything about it in memory so that if you're ever in a situation like this again, you remember that it was dangerous. So it's remembering things like the way it smells in the room, the way it looks, the way it feels, the sounds that are happening, and it's storing that experience. And what happens is, going forward, you now become sensitized to any situation that is similar, where you might feel in danger. So over time, if we let our brains run wild with this, the world can start to feel very unsafe because situations are connected and, oh, this is the same smell that I had there, or this person sounds the same way that this other dangerous person did. And we can just kind of get off on this spiral of a real negativity bias. So what do we do about that? How do we train our brains to respond in new ways? Or as Dr. Rick Hansen says, how do we hardwire our brains for happiness? And this is totally possible to do, but it takes effort because it doesn't happen naturally. As a young child, he was very interested in studying, in trying to figure out what it was about the positive things in life that actually influenced the way that he felt about the world. And what he discovered was that you have to intentionally soak in and focus on those positive things, and spend some time there feeling them in order for them to rewire your brain and make it easier to notice the positive. So he says that there are 5 ways we can do this throughout the day. And these are all ways that we can kind of work on rewiring our brains for happiness. Number 1, take pleasure. I'm going to go over each of these individually. 2, celebrate wins. 3, express gratitude. 4, help others. And 5, find refuge. And I want you to be thinking as I go through these, which of these are you pretty good at? And which of these are you not as good at? And do you want to focus more on? So taking pleasure. This has to do with all the little moments throughout your day that bring you happiness, that bring you a sense of peace, that bring you joy. So a beautiful sight. When you wake up in the morning, you open the shades and, you see the sun rising and it's glowing. Like this morning, it was glowing blood orange. It was gorgeous. And so did you take a moment to kind of notice that, observe it, soak it in, appreciate it? You might get a really fascinating idea that pops into your head, and maybe you spend a little bit of time exploring that idea or feeling grateful for it. When you have fun with other people, listening to music can make you feel really peaceful and happy. A sip of warm tea on a cold day, the call of a bird that you might hear out the window, the purring of a cat. So there are all kinds of these moments that happen throughout the day. So he says, really soak those up, really notice them, and sort of spend time enjoying them. All right, next, this is something that a lot of people are not great at, celebrating wins. We're a lot of times very task-driven and we have all these lofty goals. And as soon as we reach a goal, we immediately move on to the next goal. So what's next? What's next? What's my next step? And so Dr. Hansen says that it's important in rewiring our brains. It's important to actually acknowledge and celebrate the wins that we do have, the goals that you do reach. Our days are full of these opportunities to notice and take in experiences of where you reach goals or you accomplish something that you set out to do. So take pride in that, take some time to acknowledge it, talk about it, write about it, whatever it is that helps you celebrate. Resilience comes from internalizing many of these small successes over time. So if you think about it, resilience brings you confidence and a peace of mind that no matter what happens, I have the resources to overcome it. Well, when you celebrate your wins, you're basically programming into your brain, look at all of the things that I've accomplished. Look how far I've come. Look at all the goals I've set and I've met. And so you're basically building that foundation of confidence that you can do hard things, basically. Third, express gratitude. This is a really powerful way to shift your mindset. And it's one that I use a lot when I get stuck in a negative thinking pattern. I'll notice that I'm doing that, and I'll just really try hard to shift into gratitude. And again, it's a practice, but just shifting into the most simple thing to be grateful for and trying to move to the next thing, and really just looking for all of those things, all of those moments to appreciate. Helping others is a great way to build resilience, to improve a sense of well-being. Research shows that it decreases symptoms of depression. It helps us connect with other people. It helps us feel helps us have a purpose. All things that are super important for our well-being. I have a friend who I was texting today, and she was asking me, do I know where she can get toys for kids with special needs? And I said, well, I would look online first. What are you looking for? And so she told me the specific toy that she was looking for. And then she explained that she and her husband had adopted a child from the Center for Disability Services to buy presents for Christmas. And I said, oh, that's so sweet. And she said, it feels really good to give back. And I was thinking about how I was going to talk about that today. Exactly that. It feels good to help others, to be involved, to share some of the things that you have with other people. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be time. It can be your ideas. It can be listening to someone who's struggling. There's lots of ways that you can help other people. And then number 5, finding refuge. This is a super important thing that I use a lot, and anybody can do it at any point in the day. So you want to think about, a refuge is anything that protects, nurtures, and uplifts you. So it could be an actual place that you frequently go to that helps you feel relaxed or safe or peaceful. It might be another person that you really enjoy spending time with. That's a refuge from stress. It could be cuddling with your puppy. It could be being out in nature and going for a walk and enjoying the beauty of nature. So think about what it is. What is a refuge for you? Could be an activity that you love to get lost in, like playing a musical instrument or a sport. And you want to think about how you can escape to that place in your mind at any point during the day when you're feeling overwhelmed. So you kind of basically learn to regulate your emotions by going through life, experiencing things. Something stressful happens, it feels overwhelming, and then you kind of step back a little bit, find refuge in your mind, going to that place or that person, and just sort of imagining being there and letting those positive feelings soak in, allowing your body time to reset and calm down, and then stepping back into life, into that stressful situation. So it's something that you kind of do during the day when you're teaching, as well as being at home with your family. You can find refuge at any point in your day, stepping outside of the chaos of what's happening and into that peaceful place. So I'm going to go back to that list, and I'm going to ask you to think about, what are you good at? And maybe you can share an example of some way that you do one of these things, and where do you want to focus a little more attention? So I'm going to come back to the group. Oops. And just put it out there. Anybody can unmute and just share. Which of these do you find yourself already doing? And can you share an example of how you do it?
I would say celebrating successes, but I find that I'm celebrating student successes, but I think that is reflective of something I've done or taught them. So, but celebrating with them, but also like telling someone else, like, oh my gosh, this student did this today. But I think it helps to them to like acknowledge what they've done, but also reaffirm to myself that my teaching is getting through.
Absolutely. That's a great one. And I would challenge you to take that a step further and see if you can do that with something. So you've accomplished something through your teaching, which is an awesome example, but also see if you can notice those things that you're directly doing as well.
I know I need to focus on that.
Somebody else is sharing, they're good at finding refuge in their family, their dog, good friends, I think it said. Let's see. Oh, a good book. Yeah, that's a great example. Escaping into a book. Raquel?
I was gonna say that I think I'm good at celebrating the wins, and I think about that in like my own personal life and where I've come from to where I am, as well as in education, and just celebrating the little things with my kids, and even the people that are around me as well, just acknowledging their good things and things that they've done and accomplished. So yeah.
That's great. And do you have like a ritual around that, or is it a conversation, or how do you celebrate those things usually?
In my personal life, I celebrate with like food and shopping. You know, I give to myself to like kind of celebrate and acknowledge it for myself. And then for my kids, it's kind of the same. I mean, they're kindergarten, so I celebrate them with verbal praise or just giving them something that shows that I'm proud of them.
That's awesome. That's really great that you do that. Thanks for sharing. Somebody else said, I find refuge in nature, taking time to look around and take in the view. That's a great example. I do that a lot too. There's so many opportunities for beauty everywhere if you're looking. So anything else that you're doing well? How about what is a struggle for you? Or maybe something that you haven't really been practicing, but that you want to try. It's hard to slow down and be present. Yeah, definitely. Melissa, that was your comment. You can just use the chat to respond. I'm just wondering, when you do slow down, do you have like anxious feelings, or is it just something, is it hard to slow down, or you just usually don't remember to?
It's easier for me to talk. I can't type that fast.
Okay, that's fine.
I think that it's a combination of my mind is always racing, so it's hard to slow my thoughts down and to not be on a to-do list. It's hard for me to stop the to-do list and to be mindful, which is ironic because I'm teaching others how to be mindful, but it's harder for me to practice it.
That's such a great point. And the next webinar or the next training that we're going to do is all about mindfulness. And I thought you guys do such a good job in your classrooms with mindfulness, but do you necessarily practice those things in your own life? Maybe some of you do, but that training will be interesting because it'll be all about applying those concepts that you're probably teaching on a daily basis, but incorporating them for yourself, which is a whole different thing. Diane is saying it's hard to celebrate, or she isn't as great at celebrating her own wins, or it's hard to have time to do that. Very true. Doesn't always feel like a priority. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slides. Feel free to keep commenting in the chat if you would like to as I go. Okay. Me time, which is what we talked about last time. Just a recap of the different areas that you can incorporate self-care. So fit your physical body, things like taking care of your sleep, getting enough sleep, good nutrition, exercise, going to the doctor preventatively, getting outside and taking a walk. Then there's the psychological area of life, self-awareness, reflecting, asking for and receiving help, getting counseling or therapy if needed, just taking care of that whole piece. Then there's the emotional piece, expressing emotions, labeling those emotions, doing things that just bring out both crying, laughing, the whole range of emotions that you might be feeling, just being expressive. Spiritual, so finding what it is that helps you be connected, whether that's going to church or synagogue or another religious way of celebrating, being in nature, meditation, yoga, prayer by yourself. It could be any of those things. The personal area of life, so your friendships, your social relationships, your hobbies, things that you like to do personally, and then professional. So having boundaries, knowing when to say no, building in time to kind of take care of yourself, seeking refuge throughout the day when you feel stressed, taking breaks as needed. And lastly, we're going to talk about maintaining hope or a belief that things can and will improve. So in the midst of really challenging times, it can often feel like we've been washed over by this ocean wave, and we're just kind of like sand is running over us and we're drowning. And so if somewhere inside you have this knowledge that this won't last forever, that things will get better, this is temporary, it helps you to be more resilient and cope with that situation. Hope is positively associated with a sense of self-efficacy or a belief in your ability to do something. It's related to your self-worth. It is correlated with your sense of optimism about the future, life satisfaction and well-being, your physical health. I would add your mental health in there as well, and your social competence. So the quality, the number and quality of friendships that you have, and the sort of social connection that you have with others. Research in positive psychology suggests that creating hope is a process that we can control. There are things we can do to become more hopeful. The first thing I want you to think about is this circle of control. And so in life, there are things that are completely out of our control. We just have no control over. So government policy, the weather, an outcome of a court case, someone dying, traffic, things that may be frustrating that we may have to contend with, but we can't control them. Then if you move into the blue circle, these are things that we can't control per se, but we have influence over them. So there are things we can do to influence the outcome. So the thoughts and opinions of others. I can sort of influence someone's thoughts by things that I share with them or things I tell them. The choices of others, maybe we have a little influence there. Policies at the workplace. You may be on a committee that helps to shape the policy. Your reputation. Yeah, you have a little control over that. So that's influence. And then the pink area in the center, that's your circle of control. So things that you are in control of, your own actions, thoughts, words, mindset, work ethic, and choices. Those are things that you completely have control over. So when you're facing something difficult, you want to think about which circle am I in and put effort out in relation to that. So if it's something that is completely out of your control, worrying about it, wishing it was different, trying to change it, complaining about it is all wasted energy. And so if you can just say, I hate this, but it's completely out of my control, so I'm going to put it aside. Now you're conserving that energy for places where you can make a difference, like in your mindset, the way that you're going to think about this challenging situation. Hope theory says that there are 3 steps to building hope. The first has to do with setting goals. So Daniel Pink talks about motivation and goal-directed behavior and how mastery is motivating. And people are hopeful when they set and they achieve goals because it shows that we can make progress. We can move in a direction. The second aspect of building hope has to do with pathways thinking. So the belief that you can find a solution to a problem or meet a desired goal. And this is self-efficacy. So it's kind of the belief that, well, no matter what I come up against, I know I'll be able to figure out a way to move forward. I'll figure out a solution. And then the third is agency thinking, which is sort of this internal perseverance, grit, positive self-talk. It's the way that you kind of personally cope with challenges. So 3 basic principles for fostering hope within yourself, within anybody actually. Look for opportunities to demonstrate mastery. So that's the goal, setting goals and achieving them piece. How can I become better at something? Do I need to take a course? Do I need to read a book? Are there skills I can learn from somebody else, from a mentor? So look for opportunities to learn new things and demonstrate that you've mastered them. The second has to do with how you think about failure. If you can view it as a learning opportunity, if you have gained some new knowledge about, after failing at something, then it wasn't a failure because you've learned from it. And the third is taking a strengths perspective and focusing on what's working. So rather than being problem focused and looking at what needs to be fixed, what needs to be different or changed, looking at a challenging situation from a strengths perspective helps to build hope, because it's like there are things that are going well and there are aspects of it that are positive. So let me look at those first, see what's working, and then we'll go from there and try to build on that. A way of enhancing your sense of hope or strengthening it is setting goals, making a plan, putting your energy and will into that plan, and then the mindset piece. So reframe obstacles into challenges. How did it help me grow? The pandemic is a perfect example. So having to go 100% virtual was a crazy thing to have to do in such a short amount of time. But in the end, we all became more resilient because of it, myself included. My whole business shut down and I had to recreate everything. Everything went virtual. I didn't have anything planned. I had to redesign my whole business. But in the end, it's ended up working out better because now I can reach schools all over the country where I didn't before. So that's how I grew from that obstacle or challenge. Adopt pathways thinking. So if you take a big goal and break it down into sub goals, I think about like a weight loss goal, and rather than saying I need to lose 15 pounds, I might set a smaller goal of I need to lose 5 pounds to start. And once I achieve that, I celebrate that win, then I can move on to the next sub goal. It helps me to be more hopeful than looking at this whole big 15-pound weight loss that's going to take me a year. If one pathway doesn't work, then you try another. So it's like you're up against a wall here, so you shift and you try this path. And if that you come to an end there, you shift and you try the next path. If you need to develop a new skill in order to reach this goal, you can do that. And remember to ask for help from other people when you need it. Agency thinking is internally how you cope with these challenges. So set stretch goals based on your past performance. You don't want a goal to be too big that it's unattainable. You also don't want it to be a breeze. You want to be growing and stretching yourself. Monitor your self-talk, which I've said a couple times, just being mindful of how do you talk to yourself? Do you build yourself up, or are you self-critical? Read books that portray how others have succeeded at what you're trying to do or how they've overcome adversity. I love reading memoirs because it helps me to just understand some of the things that people have to face in life. And that helps me to realize that, other people have been able to overcome big things. So that makes me more likely or more hopeful about doing that myself. And then surround yourself with other people that have a growth mindset. And the last slide has to do with using positive affirmations. So if you notice that your self-talk is pretty negative and critical, one thing you can do is find 1 or 2 statements, positive affirmations that you connect with, and just start practicing them a couple times a day, saying them out loud and repeating them. And you're going to feel silly at first, but it's a way of reprogramming the way that you talk to yourself. Over time, your brain will start to believe these words, and it will start to say them automatically. You won't even have to think about it. So affirmations can be helpful for doing that. I'm going to come back to the group and see if anybody has any questions about anything we talked about, or any comments that you want to share with the group.
I think it was really interesting, the information about hope. I think in some, especially when it comes to like health type stuff, I think sometimes it's really hard to like be hopeful. Like if you have a family member struggling with a health issue or something that isn't going to change. So I think just kind of knowing how to kind of be more hopeful in those situations.
That's a great point. So the question is, what are you hoping for? And sometimes that might be, I'm hoping for a cure. I'm hoping for this family member to be 100% well. But if that's not going to happen, that's not a possibility, then it might be hope that that person finds the strength to cope with whatever they're facing as best as possible. So you have to kind of think about what the hope is for, and whether or not it's something that is possible to happen. That Hardwiring Happiness book is a great book if you're interested in learning more about what we talked about today. It's one of my favorite books. I go back to it all the time. So that might be something that you want to look into if you want to learn more. All right, if nobody else has any questions, then I think we'll wrap it up. And again, feel free to reach out to me if you think of something later that you want to ask or run by me. That would be fine to do. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Have a good night.
Thank
too.
you.
Too.
You're welcome.
Did you just get on the same link as last time? Because we didn't get a new one this time. Is that how we close or?
Uh,
or did you